Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Arvind Das from Chicago.
Hare Krishna, Arvind Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining the call, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada Ji ki jai. This is Niharika from Bloomington.
Hare Krishna, Niharika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Niharika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharajas, and all glories to the assembled devotees. This is Tiffany in Pennsylvania. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Tiffany Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. My humble obeisances to everyone on the call. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This is Pranita from Ashburn, Virginia.
Hare Krishna, Pranita Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining the call and giving your association this morning. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Niharika Mataji. This is Kamadaki Dasi from Baltimore. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Niharika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada. This is Suraj Bhakti Devi Dasi from Columbus, Ohio.
Hare Krishna, Kamadiki Mataji and Rajbhakti Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining the call and giving your association this morning. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Niharika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharajas. This is Padmasaki Devi Dasi from Florida.
Hare Krishna, Padmasaki Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Mataji, humble obeisances to the assembled devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is Vivek from Hyderabad, India.
Hare Krishna, Vivek Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining the call, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Guru Maharaj. This is Flavia from Atlanta.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining the call and giving your association this morning with us, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Vrinda Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, happy Makar Sankranti to everybody. Hare Krishna.
Happy Makar Sankranti to you and everybody on the call. Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Niharika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. This is Radha from Baltimore.
Hare Krishna, Radha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, this is Linda in Michigan.
Hare Krishna. I apologize.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mataji.
I'm sorry, just all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for your nice oration.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Linda Mataji. Thank you so much for joining the call and giving your association this morning. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Niharika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Guri Dasi from Charlotte.
Hare Krishna, Shama Gauri Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj Mataji. Thank you so much for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to our Guru Maharajas, and all glories to assembled devotees here. This is Nina from Naperville, Chicago.
Hare Krishna, Nina Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining the call and giving your association this morning, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Niharika Mataji, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. My humble obeisances to you and all the devotees. This is Krishna Kumari Devidasi from Rana.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Kumari Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining the call and giving your association with us morning. Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you.
Yeah, Niharika Mataji, Malati Prabhu is here.
Okay, yeah. Welcome to Bhakti Sangha conference call. Today we are very fortunate to have Her Grace Malati Prabhuji on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, verse 4, canto, 31st chapter and 20th verse onwards. Prabhuji to enlighten us on the topic. And I would like to, before handing over the call to Prabhuji, I would like to hand over the call to Tiffany Mataji for the brief introduction. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Hare Krishna, Niharika Mataji. Her Grace, Malati Devidasi, was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in San Francisco in 1967 and became an integral part of the pioneer years of ISKCON. Her discovery of Jagannath deities led to the worship of Lord Jagannath in ISKCON. In 1968, along with her 6-week-old daughter, Saraswati, she was part of a team of 6 adults to establish Krishna consciousness in the UK. This adventure resulted in the release of the Radha Krishna Temple album in 1969 that was produced by Beatle George Harrison. The Maha Mantra and other devotional songs were featured on this recording, which received worldwide attention. Malati Devidasi then moved to India to help establish ISKCON there and bring it back to its source. During her time there, she assisted with acquiring several sets of temple murtis to establish deity worship in temples and cities in North America, such as Detroit, Dallas, Chicago, and Toronto. In 1990, she established an all-female ISKCON temple, which later was awarded a large roadside bronze plaque by the State of Ohio Historical Society, recognizing the center as the first Vaishnav or Hindu temple in the state. In 1998, she became the first woman to be appointed to the GBC. Malati Dasi is a founding member of the Vaishnavi ministry, which at the time was called the Women's Ministry. She is also the impetus for the beautiful book, Bond of Love, Srila Prabhupada and His Daughters, which is full of accounts from over 300 of his female disciples of the affection he had for them, as well as his engagement of them in service to Krishna. So thank you very much. And I just wanted to show the book. If you haven't already seen it, please get it. Hare Krishna, welcome to the call, Malati Mataji. It's so good to see you.
Good to see all of you also. It's a nice way to start the day. Should I start?
Yeah, Dhanwad Pranam, Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Please hand over. I will now hand over the call to you, Prabhuji. Please go ahead.
Just a second here. Get things so I can see them. Hare Krishna. So today is a very auspicious day, actually, and there's several kind of occasions that are occurring on this day. And one is, of course, probably all of you know this, Makara Sankranti. But on this day also, Lord Chaitanya took his sannyas, and Bhishmadev elected to leave his body, surrounded by his dear friends, the Pandavas, and more importantly, Lord Krishna. And sometimes you read or you hear a person left, they were in their bed, they were surrounded by their family, they peacefully left. Bhishmadev was lying on a bed of arrows. All these arrows had been, he was involved in this horrific fight, described as a fratricidal war. And he was invincible. And invincible means no one could defeat him. And at a certain point, so many of the opposition had just shot their arrows, and they'd passed right through him, but halted. So he was filled with arrows. And he lay down, and these arrows kept him from touching the ground. So literally, although they had pierced his body and he was lying there on these arrows that kept him elevated from the ground. So I think an ordinary person would not really imagine, could not even imagine what pain there must have been or could have been. I know one time when I was in India at Jagannath Puri, this was in the late 70s, toward the end, it was after Prabhupada's disappearance, so maybe 78. There was a little path which I was taking, and on that path were several types of yogis. Some of them were like totally pretzeled up, you know, their legs were all different, wrapping around their body and their arms, and couldn't even move. And there was this one person who was lying on a bed of nails. And I was thinking, I wonder if he has some little softening, you know, something on the tip of the nails that softens it, you know, so that it's not really feeling a poke of the nails. But I looked very carefully and I could not see anything between his body and the nails. So, I mean, it's not, that is a byproduct of different types of yogic power, you know, but such a type of power and such a type of accomplishment to lie on a bed of nails in a footpath in Puri, it's not that wonderful, actually. Why? Because unless your activity connects you with Krishna in loving devotional service, that activity is described in the Bhagavatam as a waste of time. You know. Now, Bhishma was not playing around and being a yogi. He was a great yogi by dint of his love for Lord Krishna. And whatever he did was done out of love and service to Krishna, up until the fact that he was actually on the opposing side of the battlefield. He was opposing Krishna, and Krishna, of course, was just playing the role of Arjuna's chariot driver. And he hadn't taken any side. He had let the heads, let Arjuna and the other head of the army, you decide what you want. I can serve as the chariot driver, or somebody can have my entire army. Obviously, the opposing side, I'll take the army. Arjuna was very happy to have his dearmost friend, Krishna, as his chariot driver. And up until that point, oh, what is this? Wait a minute. Oh, just a second. Sorry, it's like an automatic thing that comes on my phone, but I thought I had all that shut down. So at this moment, they're greeting Radha Vrindavan Chandra. So Radha Vrindavan Chandra ki jai, Vrindavan. So he wasn't himself infatuated with any particular yogic power. He was infatuated, if you want to consider that, with Lord Krishna. And he took the role of on the opposing side out of service for Lord Krishna. He was such a principled person, actually. So he had this benediction. And the benediction was that he could choose the time of his departure. Just like we know from the Bhagavatam, Maharaj Pariksit had a benediction that came in the form of a curse, that 7 days, you will die in 7 days. So why is that a benediction? Because then he could automatically reposition all of his consciousness toward being in the right consciousness, Krishna consciousness, at the time of his passage. Most of us are not too much aware of when we'll die, and if the truth be said, probably many would prefer not to know. But these were very powerful warriors and very honorable persons, and very principled. So in lying on that bed of arrows, with the Pandavas around and Lord Krishna at his feet so that he could see him with his gaze, he left his body. And there was a beautiful, he was meditating. And meditation is aimed at lifting your consciousness. Nowadays, people, they want to meditate for so many reasons, just like people take yoga classes for so many reasons. They want to decrease their weight. They want to increase their ability to enjoy. They want to get peace of mind, maybe, so many reasons, good health. But the real point and purpose of yoga and meditation is to raise our consciousness to the point of being able to not be distracted by any material objectives or desires. So Bhima was deeply meditating on Krishna, and his consciousness was at a pure transcendental state. And the result of that was he didn't feel any pain from these arrows or the other wounds that had occurred during the battlefield. Just like we've had experience with Srila Prabhupada, that he had to go for some procedure and they wanted to give him some kind of numbing, pain relieving type of injection. And Prabhupada wouldn't hear of it. And then the doctors were, my God, how can we do this? Prabhupada was completely peaceful, completely calm. They did what they had to do. And they were astounded. This was in London. They were astounded because in what they would consider any normal person would have been in such great pain, they would have been howling. Prabhupada remained completely peaceful. And of course, one of the byproducts of a perfect consciousness is that you no longer identify with the shirt or the body. The body's a shirt for the soul, a dress for the soul. The minute you start to identify with that body, your body, you get all these bodily related feelings such as pain or pleasure, etc. And even though we know intellectually that we're not the body, if you're confronted with a situation, you may find that you're not so elevated. Your knowledge hasn't become realized. I had a personal experience with this a number of years ago. I mean, probably a very long time ago. That we were bringing Sita, Ram, Lakshman, and Hanuman to Tuwako. The deities in Tuwako, Sita, Ram, Lakshman, and Hanuman, they were formerly in New Vrindavan, and they were being brought to Tuwako. And there was an incident where at a traffic stop, had to apply the brakes a little, and Hanuman fell over on top of a young devotee who was riding in the back of the van also, right into her head. And there was a lot of blood. And we took her to an emergency room and immediately were fast forwarded. And she was completely peaceful. She was just chanting. And the doctor comes in and he had this huge needle and he was going to, give her a numbing shot. And I'm standing there. They allowed me to be in there with her. I'm chanting. I saw that huge needle and all of a sudden I had this, oh my God, sounds quite quickly was, oh my God, it's not even my body. And I am reacting, So I could see, well, she's not the body, I'm not the body. But the minute I see there may be a disturbance to the body, I start to react. So it takes a lot of practice to actually come to the point of realization of I'm not this body. And if I'm not the body, what am I? And what am I supposed to be doing? So there's a lot that goes into that beyond just saying we're not the body, we're spirit, soul. So Bhishma was fully realized that he wasn't that body, that he was spirit, soul. And along with being spirit, soul, he was the servant of Lord Krishna. And Lord Krishna loves his devotees so much, although he is impartial to everyone. And people will dispute that. If he's impartial, then why does he respond to the devotees and give them some special favor? But that's only natural. You know, if you love someone and someone loves you, there will be a particular reciprocation. If you don't love a person or you deny a person, such as the impersonalists, they deny the existence of Krishna as a supreme personality of Godhead. There's no relationship being built, a relationship of denial, you might say. So then there's a reciprocation in the same way. Yeah. So as he lay there, he offered some wonderful prayers. I just had it up and it just disappeared. So he was, you know, in this deeply meditative state, and he goes, let me now invest my thinking, feeling, and willing solely means only, in the all-powerful Lord Sri Krishna. He is always self-satisfied, but sometimes he enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending to the material world. Sri Krishna, the intimate friend of Arjuna, has appeared on earth. This is Bhishma speaking, or meditating, has appeared on earth in his transcendental bluish form, which is attractive to everyone in the three worlds. May that Krishna, with his glittering yellow dress and lotus-like face, be the sole object of my attraction. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna's armor shone brightly. The armor means the protective gear of a wearer. His flowing hair turned ashen from the dust upraised by the horse's hooves, and beads of perspiration moistened his face. He enjoyed it when my sharp arrows pierced his skin. Let my mind be absorbed in these thoughts of Sri Krishna. So he's remembered in the Vedic literature for his unparalleled heroism. I mean, we could give a whole class just on Bhishma Dev, his birth, his, you know, how he even became to be called Bhishma. The meaning of Bhishma means terrible vow. His great vow of celibacy, which is how come he was named Bhishma, great terrible vow, and his deep devotion to Lord Krishna. And his glorious death confirms Krishna's statements in the Bhagavad Gita that the sober person is not bewildered by the change of body known as death. The self-realized soul is not disturbed even in the greatest difficulty. So by fixing our minds on Krishna and serving him during our lifetime, we can, like Bhishma, cross over the material ocean, of material tribulations, and enter the spiritual world at the time of death. So, those few words about Bhishma Dev. So we'll go to our verse, and then somewhere along the line, I'll keep note of the time because I want to speak about the wonderful pastime of the sannyas celebration of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And oops, where did we go here? So, oh, wait a minute, you've just covered my notes. Okay. You've put up the verse, which is fine, but I'm going to need to look at my notes. So I'm just saying, once we read the verse and the purport, Can you get it out? It's okay now if it's on the screen. I need to read it. But after I read the purport, can you remove it at least from my screen? Is that possible? I'm not getting an answer. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. So just one verse of Jayarada Madhava as per Srila Prabhupada's normal procedure. And if you like, sing along. Well, I'll just sing one line one time. Jayarada Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yasodanandana Bhajanarandana Yasodanandana Bhajanarandana Yamunati Ravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, if you could raise this up so that I could see the cinnamons and because I will read it word by word and translation before I say the whole verse. So just put it up a little bit more. Good, that's good. Right now is good. And I want to get this out of the way. Okay. Apahata is vanquished. Sakala, all. Esana, desires. Amala, spotless. Atmani, to the mind. Aviratam, constantly. Edita, increasing. Bhavana, with feeling. Upahuta, being called. Nijana, of his devotees. Vasa, under the control. Gatvam, going. Atmana, his. Ayan, knowing. Na, never. Sarati, goes away. Chidravat, like the sky. Akshara, the supreme personality of Godhead. Satam, of the devotees. He, certainly. So we'll just say the verse once so that we can try to honor the time frame. Apahata sakalaisha namala. Apata sakalaisha namamala tatmani aviratam medita bhavano paho ta nijajana vasakatam atmanodyan nasarati chidravadakar sarasatam hi. Translation: being completely cleansed of all material desires, the devotees are freed from all mental contamination. Thus, they can always think of the Lord constantly and address him very feelingly. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing himself to be controlled by his devotees, does not leave them for a second. Just as the sky overhead never becomes invisible. Such a beautiful verse and so appropriate for this day. It is clear from the previous verse that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Janardhan, is very quickly satisfied by the activities of his devotees. The pure devotee is always absorbed in the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated, Srinvatam Swakata Krishna. By always thinking of Krishna, the pure devotee's heart is freed from all kinds of desires. In the material world, the heart of the living entity is filled with material desires. When the living entity is cleansed, he does not think of anything material. As the mind is completely cleansed, one attains the perfectional stage of the mystic yoga. For then, the yogi, always sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart. Dhyana vashtitattad gatena manasa pashyantiyam yogina. As soon as the Lord is situated within his, as soon as the Lord is seated within the heart of the devotee cannot be contaminated by the material modes of nature. As long as one is under the control of the material modes, he desires so many things and makes so many plans for material sense enjoyment. But as soon as the Lord is perceived in the heart, all material desires vanish. When the mind is completely free from material desire, the devotee can think of the Lord constantly. In this way, he becomes completely dependent on the lotus feet of the Lord. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prays, Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishwamebhavan Buddho Kripatava Pala Pankanja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintaya. My dear Lord, I am your eternal servant, but somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of this material world. Kindly pick me up and fix me as a speck of dust at your lotus feet. And of course, this is Shastastaka 5. And similarly, Srila Narottam Das Thakur prays, Haha Prabhunanda Shutta Vishabhanu Shutta Yutta Karuna Karahe Bara Narottam Das Sakai Nate Lila Nate Liha Rangapai Tomavini Ke Acha Amara. My dear Lord, you are now present with the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, Srimati Radharani. Now both of you, please be merciful unto me. Don't kick me away, because I have no shelter other than you. In this way, the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes dependent on his devotee. The Lord is invincible, yet he is conquered by his pure devotee. He enjoys being dependent on his devotee, just as Krishna enjoyed being dependent on the mercy of Mother Yasoda. Thinking himself dependent on the devotee gives the Supreme Lord great enjoyment. Sometimes a king may engage a joker, we call them court jester. In the process of joking, the king is sometimes insulted. The king, however, enjoys these activities. Everyone worships the Supreme Lord with great reverence, and therefore the Lord sometimes wants to enjoy the chastisement of his devotees. In this way, the relationship eternally existing between the Lord and his devotees is fixed, just like the sky overhead. So, Om Agyan Timirandasya Janana Sakaya Chakshunaitam Yena Tasme Sridharve Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatya Desatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Everyone, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Vaivyacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So much information, so much instructions on the proper way of living our human form of life is being given out in this chapter, 31st chapter. We're taught that the human civilization should be based on the Vedic principles. And Prabhupada explains early on in the chapter that these Vedic principles, he gives a clear example. This means that in the beginning of life, boys and girls should undergo penances and austerities. And then when they're grown, they should get married and live for some time at home, beget children. And then when the children are grown, the husband would leave home and search for Krishna consciousness in solitude. And he commented, in this way, one can make one's life perfect by going back home and back to Godhead. But he emphasizes, unless one practices austerity and penances in the younger life or student life, we cannot understand the existence of God. And without realizing Krishna, we cannot make this life perfect. So in this day and age, we don't have to search out for penances and austerities. They're just coming at us right, left, and center. But we have to embrace them in the mood of God consciousness so that we can actually come to the point of realizing Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when one actually becomes spiritually advanced, then one does not see, here's an example, one example, but the most important one, we don't see the difference between one living entity and another. And Prabhupada explained that this platform is attained by determination. So when perfect knowledge is expanded, then one ceases to see these outward covering and rather sees the spirit soul within the body and does not make any distinction between human beings, animals, Ilurman, Brahman, and Chandala. This is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, that the humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater, or an outcast. This is what it means to be fully realized and to understand that we are all spirit soul. Just to say it, I'm not the body, I'm spirit soul. It's a good mantra, but we need to come to the level of realization. So one who is desiring this perfection of liberation, should associate with persons who are already liberated. And that's called Sadhusanga, or associating with perfect devotees. So such an example of a perfect devotee is Sri Narada Muni. And it's described that one of the purports that the door of every house was open for Narada Muni. And even though there is a perpetual state of animosity between the demigods, the Asuras, and the demigods, between the demigods and the demons, the Asuras. So the demigods, of course, are on the favorable side. Narada Muni is welcomed everywhere. Even though he is considered to be a demigod, he's known as a Devarshi, that means saintly persons among the demigods. But even the demons, they don't envy Narada Muni. He's equally worshipped by the demons and the demigods. So it's stated that a perfect Vaishnava, our position should also be like Narada Muni. Such a person also, the 6 Goswamis, they were completely worshipped and honored by the ruffians and the devotees alike, because they were completely unbiased and fully attached to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So this material world, we hear it all the time. It's just not a great place, dark by nature. And darkness generally instills some kind of fear, or fear of danger. And in that moment of fear, when we see or come across a pure devotee like Narada, all fear is relieved. Many of us have had that experience of feeling fearful before becoming devotees, feeling fearful. We don't understand what's going on. We have no knowledge of our actual constitutional position. And when we become in contact with our spiritual masters who give us transcendental knowledge and information, that darkness is lifted from our hearts. So when one meets such a personality like Narada or his representative, the spiritual master, one can become freed of anxiety brought around by ignorance. So in this chapter, the Prachetas who were doing their deep meditation, they had requested Narada to enlighten them in transcendental knowledge. So that was the proper way to receive a saintly person. And generally, when a common person meets a saintly person, he wants a benediction. He'll request a benediction, a material benediction. And I saw this so much with Srila Prabhupada. We experienced that. These people would come, they would have the great opportunity to inquire and get spiritual knowledge. And instead, they wanted to know when would they become wealthy? I remember he was being asked that, or they wanted to get something like a house or a college degree or a particular type of wife, so many material things that could be had anywhere cheaply. And instead of asking for spiritual knowledge, they were asking for material benedictions. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada could be quite humorous in how he responded. One person who had quite a lot of children had proudly presented all the children and his wife to Srila Prabhupada, and he was asking for a benediction, and Prabhupada said, "I bless you to become a sannyasi," which wasn't really what the person had in mind. But if we approach a saintly or person in order to be enlightened, that is how we should approach. We shouldn't bother them just to get mundane blessings for material enjoyment. I mean, what kind of a saintly person would want to offer mundane blessings, which would end up keeping the person more committed to their material activities? So in the Shastra, these material benedictions are not recommended. So, and it's also mentioned that one's birth is successful if an interest in Krishna consciousness, God consciousness is taken. And we know that actually that's very rare in this world. At the present moment, the senses being impure, there becomes a battle sometimes, even within our minds, that yes, we want to become a pure devotee, and then our mind isn't, but I want this, but I want that. And we're trying to shut it down, and we have these little internal mental battles. But the proper response is to engage these senses, which are engaged in the false service of society, friendship, love, politics, sociology, and so on, to engage our senses in the service of this Lord. And the result there is, instead of becoming entangled, one attains bhakti, or devotional service. There was one great devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he mentioned that today everything is auspicious. Today my birthplace and neighborhood are completely glorified. Today my senses from my eyes down to my toes are fortunate. Today my life is successful because I have seen the lotus feet of the Lord that are worshipped by the goddess of fortune. So this is a good state of consciousness. Many religious systems will promote austerities and penances, but they do not do so with the idea or the view of connecting to Krishna. So then there's no point for such penance or tapasya. If one has actually approached the Supreme Lord He doesn't have to undergo excess outside austerities, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is understood through the process of devotional service. And that's explained in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that devotional service is explained as Rajaguyam, the king of all confidential knowledge. So as far as our senses are concerned, many animals, beasts, birds, they're very expert in exercising their senses even more keenly than a human being. Prabhupada's given examples of, like, there's a great eagle or a hawk, and they're flying high in the sky. And from that high point in the sky, they look down and they can spot a little tiny animal. Sometimes it's even a little tiny dead animal. And they'll immediately zoom down. We have not such eyes. And other animals, wild animals or dogs, they have a very keen sense of smell. Even before they see something, they will smell it and will start to search it out. Fish is able to live submerged in water. In fact, if he's not submerged in water, he becomes, he'll lose his life. So these different facilities for one's senses are there in animals, aquatics, birds, beasts, but they don't do anything more than keep them going in that body. So far as our senses are concerned, we should purify them by using them in the service of the Supreme Lord. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Sanatana Goswami that without a touch of devotional service, Jnana Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, philosophy, the Sankhya philosophy can't give the desired results. So the impersonalists, they want to merge into the Supreme Brahman. But after merging into the Brahman, even merging into the Brahman, it's stated that it requires a touch of devotional service. That's the words we use, a touch of devotional service. We know the absolute truth is recognized in these three phases, the impersonal, the Brahman, the Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada put in this commentary that all of these require a touch of devotional service. These transcendental practices that do not ultimately help one realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then they're considered useless. It's the duty of the living entity to understand our real identity. Very important. And when we do realize our identity, then Krishna gives all facility to come to the platform of devotional service. This is the perfection of life. And Krishna confirms this in Bhagavad Gita 10:10, that those who are constantly devoted to me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So the conclusion is that one must come to the platform of Bhakti Yoga, even though one may begin with Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or Astanga Yoga. But unless you come to this platform of Bhakti Yoga, self-realization, the realization of the absolute truth is not achievable. So then in this particular chapter, that wonderful example we hear quite often about pouring water on the root of the tree to energize the trunk, the branches, the leaves, everything else. Or the other example is supplying food to the stomach and enlivens the senses and limbs of the body. Simply worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts and parcels of personality. This is a very famous verse, the 14th verse. So we learn that the transcendental rays emanating from the body of Krishna, and within those rays, which are the Brahmana effulgence, everything is existing. And this is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Matstani Sarvabhutani. Although Krishna is not personally present everywhere. His energy is the cause of all creation. And that cosmic manifestation that is coming is nothing but a display of Krishna's energy. The total material energy is radiating from the body of Krishna. And at such a time, the entire cosmic manifestation becomes visible. And then when Krishna winds up everything vanishes. And this is explained in the Brahma Samhita in a different way, that this entire material creation comes from the body of Krishna, the Supreme Lord. And then the example is like one is sleeping, the senses are inactive, but it doesn't mean they're absent. And when one is awakened, the senses again become active. So in the same way, this cosmic manifestation is sometimes manifest, sometimes unmanifest. And this process of creation and dissolution is made possible by the inconceivable breathing of Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu, as powerful as he is only a plenary portion of Krishna. It also is mentioned how the material or physical elements are the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But they're separate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is never affected by material conditions. And this is confirmed in the first canto, first verse of the Bhagavad Gita, Janmati Asya Yata. This creation, this maintenance, this dissolution of this cosmic manifestation, that's all happening due to the existence of the Supreme Lord. And at the same time, the Lord is never affected by these changes of the material elements. There's the example given how like a water will just pour off the back of a swan. We've seen that in New Vrindavan. Like when it pours rain, the poor peacocks just get soaked. They really look miserable. But the swans, they're swimming happily. Of course, they're in the water, but the water doesn't soak them. They're not affected by this pouring of rain. So in the same way, the Supreme Lord, he's not affected by changes in material elements. It also says that the Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Nara Govinda Sarvakarana Karnam. Very, very important, famous verse that Srila Prabhupada would quite often quote, that Krishna, who is known as Govinda, the Supreme Godhead, he is eternal, blissful and spiritual body, and he's the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he's the prime cause of all causes. And although he's the supreme cause of all causes, he is still Parama, transcendental, and his form is Sachidananda, eternal, spiritual bliss. Krishna is the shelter of everything. And this is the verdict of Shastra. So in the Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says, Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suyate Sa Characharam. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and producing all moving and unmoving things. So according to the advice of Narada Muni here, that one should directly engage in devotional service, and this will include all pious activity. So Krishna is stating that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the statement is Krishna Bhakti Kaila Sarva Karma Krita Hoy, that when one worships the Supreme Lord Krishna in devotional service, one automatically performs all pious activities. And yet the personality of Godhead is never affected by material qualities. So the upshot is that one who is conversant with this knowledge can utilize everything in the service for Lord Krishna, because nothing in this world is not connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one of the mentioned things is Daya Sarvapateshu, that showing mercy to all conditioned souls. That The best way to show mercy is Krishna consciousness. And the entire world is suffering for want of this knowledge. People should know that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original cause. And knowing this, one should directly engage in his service. This mercy to all conditioned souls is achieved automatically by serving Krishna. And the Hare Krishna Mahamantra unconditionally benefits all souls, all creatures, plants, animals, aquatics, to speak of human beings. So the devotee can do good not only to humanity, but to all living entities as well. And everyone can benefit spiritually by the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And when that transcendental vibration of Hare Krishna is sounded, even the trees and the animals and the insects, they benefit. So then it's enjoined that when one chants the Hare Krishna Mahamantra loudly, he is actually showing mercy to all living entities. And though, therefore, to spread this Krishna consciousness movement throughout the world, devotees should remain satisfied in all conditions. And even if preaching in hell, the pure devotee, he remains a pure devotee by his constant association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the constant association is easily achieved by chanting his holy names. But still, to achieve this state, one has to control the senses. But these senses are automatically controlled when one's mind is engaged in service of the Lord. And this engagement is best achieved again by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. When Srila Prabhupada was preparing to come to America, a few days before his departure, he went to a temple that he would formerly go to in his Grihastha days. It was in Mayapur, and he would go there and chant. And this was noticed by the pujari, but the pujari noticed that he was such intensely chanting that he never interrupted him. Now, after many years, he saw again there was this sadhu, but this time instead of being in white, he was wearing the robes of a sannyas. And he was there and chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And again, he did not think to disturb him. But after chanting for some time, Prabhupada came up to this person and he said to this person, "Please bless me, for I'm going on an impossible mission. My spiritual master is sending me on an impossible mission to the West. In the West, everyone is suffering for lack of knowledge of Radha and Krishna. So please bless me so I may become successful." And then sometime later, some years later, he happened to find a Back to Godhead magazine, and he was looking at it, and he saw the picture of Srila Prabhupada. The magazine was in English, of course, and he saw that, and he realized he has become successful in his mission. So, a few words about the wonderful pastime of Lord Citanius sannyas. And of course, again, this was something could take a whole class. It's just a very incredible pastime. So during his time, the influence of Shankaracharya in society was very, very strong. And people thought that one could or should accept sannyas only in the disciplic succession of Shankaracharya. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could have continued performing his missionary activities as a grihastra, but he found this household life was an obstruction to his mission. It wasn't his ego, he had a mission. He was appearing to transform the current society through the initiation of the Yuga Dharma, chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. But as a Grihastha, he wasn't given much recognition. So the recognition wasn't for his ego, it was in order to pave the way for successful preaching. So he accepted his sannyas to attract public attention so that they would listen to him. And he didn't want to disturb the social convention, so he took renounced life from a sannyasi in the disciplic succession of Shankaracharya, although the sannyas was also sanctioned in the Vaishnava Sampradayas. So, 500 years ago at Katwa, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas. In the middle of the night, when everyone in his family was sleeping, he quietly got up. His beautiful young wife was asleep. His mother was asleep, and he left. He was very young. He was very beautiful. He was a tall figure. He was only 24 years old. Had beautiful curling hair. At Katwa, there's a very famous tree under where his hair was clipped. He called the barber, and he requested to be shaved up. But when the barber came, he could not even think about touching the beautiful body of Nimai Pandit, and he began to cry, "How can I remove such beautiful hair from such a beautiful head?" And all the others who were there, they were also crying aloud, "What a horrible thing is about to be done! Who is the creator of this sannyas? Who is so hard-hearted that they created the sannyas ashram where one must give up all that is near and dear and go door to door begging, leaving his own friends and relatives crying helplessly? What is the creation? Is it logical? Is it a happy thing? It's cruel." And all this lamentation was going on. Nimai Pandit was simply smiling, and he kept telling the barber, "Cut, cut." And the barber just couldn't do it. "I can't do it." And Nimai Pandit was literally ordering him. And at last, finally, he had to do the service of shaving the beautiful curling hair of the beautiful face of the 24-year-old beautiful Nimai Pandit. So he began with his shears, and some people, they couldn't even stand the scene. Some even became maddened in the midst of their weeping and wailing and crying and threatening. It was finally done. At one point, after only being half shaved, Nimai Pandit stood up and he began chanting in kirtan, dancing in ecstatic joy. And after he was fully shaved, the barber promised, "I will never again shave anyone with this hand. I would rather live by begging. This is my last seva as a barber." And he threw away those shears. And after that, he took up the occupation of a sweet maker. So ultimately, Nimai's appeals pacified the mob. And a little bit before noon, the inevitable was done. The sannyas function was performed. So Chandrasekharacharya, who was the maternal uncle of Nimai Pandit, was deputed to take charge of the rituals in the ceremony of sannyas. So when the mantra was to be confirmed, Nimai Pandit asked Keshava Bharati, "Is this the mantra you will give to me? I had it in a dream." And he whispered the mantra into the ear of his guru, who said, "Yes, this is the mantra I shall give you." And the mantra was given. But by whispering into the ear of his guru, he had initiated Vaishnav mantra. So the name of this sannyasi that came from Keshava Bharati was Krishna Chaitanya. And there's a list of 10 names that are generally given to sannyasis. But he was given the name Krishna Chaitanya. And as soon as the crowd heard that, they began to cry incessantly, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. All glories to Sri Krishna Chaitanya. So the greatest authorities in this cyclic succession have not offered to explain why Lord Chaitanya refused to take the name Bharati after he took sannyas from a Bharati, Bharati's being one of those 10 names, until Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami volunteered the explanation that because the sannyasi in Shankara Sampradaya thinks he has become the Supreme Lord, because that's what the Shankarats think. Lord Chaitanya wanted to avoid such a misconception because he was playing the role of a devotee. When people would say, you are the Supreme Lord, you must be God, he would just, Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu, he would cover his ears. So in order to prevent that, he kept that name, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, placing himself as an eternal servitor. He did not negate the relationship of servitude to a spiritual master, and accepting such a position is favorable for the relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master. So that's kind of just a very short synopsis of the wonderful ceremony of Lord Chaitanya's taking sannyas at Katwa. So I think I've kind of kept the time frame together somehow or other. So if there's any questions, we can try to answer, although seems to me most of you are very, very spiritually well situated and could probably answer your own questions better than I could. But if you have some question, I can try.
Thank you very so much, Prabhu. That's a wonderful class, and it's very blissful to hear and everything. And thank you so much for sharing your realizations as well. Devotees, please go ahead. And if you have any questions or realizations or comments, please go ahead. Thank you.
The sound of silence.
Hare. Please accept my humble obeisances. This is Malati Prabhu. Very, very wonderful pastime that we related very much. Thank you very much.
So if there's no question, then
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. This is Vinita Gandharvika. Very, very beautiful, beautiful class. You were talking about Bhishma Dev, how the austerity needs to be done in the early age, and then later, we can be fixed in our Krishna consciousness. And you were sharing the pastime of the barber. So barber became a sweet man, sweet swelling man.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Prabhu. I never heard that pastime. Thank you.
Wait. Back up. What did you? I didn't quite get that. You said you were talking about Bhishma Dev, and then what?
That I said that pastime was good, and next I was talking about the pastime of the barber cutting the hair of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Yeah.
That one I am talking.
Yeah. Okay.
I never heard about that pastime at all. This is the first time I heard it. Thank you so much. It was very nice, very, very beautiful, beautiful class. Thank you so much for giving your association on this auspicious day. We are very fortunate, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
And your singing was very nice when you're telling Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Means once Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was getting initiated and everybody were saying this. It was so nice. I could feel that I was in that moment. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Wonderful, wonderful class.
Prabhu, Kaumadiki Mataji was I think sharing her realizations or asking for the question, but Mataji, your microphone voice is very, very low. We are having a hard time to hear you, Mataji. If you could type, I can read it for Prabhu. Komadiki Mataji, would you like to try again? Could you speak?
Let me connect.
Yeah, it is a little bit better, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Malati Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
And pastimes that you related. And like Mataji said, Vinita Mataji, that I also heard the first time that barber became a sweet maker, opened the sweet shop, and since he was selling the sweets, which Lord Chaitanya liked. Thank you very much for the class. Very, very nice, wonderful pastimes. But also Bhishma Day's glorification and Lord Chaitanya's pastimes of taking sannyas. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Bhishma Dev ki jai.
Oh, I didn't hear.
So in this day, it's also good if we can increase our chanting. And of course, maybe you have things you may have to do, such as go to work, whatever. But, you can always chant. Even if it's not out loud, you can chant in your head and keep connected with Krishna that way. One time, a family, it was a mother and father, and they came to Prabhupada because their son had joined and they weren't too happy about it. And they were trying to find ways to convince Prabhupada to send their son back. And he said, but, he's not a prisoner. He can go anytime he wants. And, they were trying different ways. And then finally, because it was in a farm setting, he goes, so if everybody's always chanting Hare Krishna, who's going to milk the cows? And Prabhupada smiled. He goes, we will milk the cows. We milk the cows. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So whatever we do, there's no obstacle to chanting the holy name. At one point, before he was a sannyasi, Satsvarup Maharaj, he was the temple president in Boston, and later during that time, he became a grihastha. And he maintained, actually, first he was in New York City, so he had a job. And his job was with the social service department, I think. And he was asking Prabhupada, would it be all right if he chanted while he was working? Yes, he was chanting in his mind. Otherwise, if he had a break, he would go somewhere in a corner and, chant on his beads. But the point being, there's no limit to where one can chant, Even when he went to Japan, one boy asked him, can we chant in the bathroom? Like, yes, you can chant in the bathroom. There's no limit to where we can chant, So today, no limit to where we can chant.
Thank you very so much once again, Prabhu. I mean, you're reading my mind. I had these questions, how can we chant during the time of work? And then if we chant as also, Prabhu, what happens usually when I'm in the call or when I'm working? I chant halfway. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. That's it. So then somebody talks to me or I'll get a call. So I don't know what I have to do during that time. Do I need to complete 16 words or just?
According to the situation, time, place, and circumstance.
Yeah.
We don't, the most important thing, get those 16 rounds done. We figure out how to do that, but we know that's not the end, so we can always be chanting whatever we're doing. I had one god sister, very extraordinary personality, 8 kids. And I asked her, how do you get your rounds done? And it was a fact. Her hand was always in her bead bag. She said that as soon as she's up in the morning, she takes her bath and she puts her hand in her bead bag. She said, and I never take it out. She said, I decided I was never going to let these little kids stand in between me and my 16 rounds. And at the same time, she perfectly took care of her children. The determination has to be there.
That's a wonderful realization that, yeah, we have to follow her footsteps. Maybe I have to, especially. Thank you, Mataji.
And if you're in a situation where it would be awkward or distracting to others, if your hand was in a bag, or your hand's in a bag and you're, like people might. So, you have your fingers. You can can't and, do that.
Sure. So yeah, sure, Prabhu. I will definitely. I do not know that we can count it through the fingers, but I will definitely. Thank you very so much.
But this chanting is extra on top of the 16 rounds.
16 rounds. I agree. Yeah.
It is just like when we it's explained that how we should chant in a humble state of mind, right? And in such a humble state of mind, one can chant the holy name constantly. And we may be thinking, well, how is it possible? But really, all of you have probably had an experience either at a Rath Yatra where there's continuous chanting or at a large prolonged kirtan. And when you come home, like even your mind is just that kirtan's in your mind, you're chanting, you're driving, you're chanting, you're preparing some prasad, you're chanting. You go to sleep and you hear the kirtan. Kirtanaya Sada Hari. No imposition. So we actually want to get to that point. We get it once in a while, but we want that once in a while to become the norm.
Thank you, Prabhu. Devotees, please go ahead if you would like to share comments or ask questions for Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. This is Flavia from Atlanta. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj. I really want to just thank you for your exemplary example of humility yourself. I've listened to you many times and I really enjoy everything that you always speak about. It's very clear, showing your wisdom, and you're not feeding us any spiritual food without accepting it and displaying it yourself. And it's very obvious. And I just want to thank you because I'm learning and I'm so fallen and I need the example. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We all need each other in devotional service.
Yes.
This is what it's for. We can't make it alone. Or if we try due to circumstances, it's very difficult. So one of the most valuable things that Prabhupada has given us is this association of devotees. And one of the most valuable things during this whole epidemic that's going on has been the increased association of devotees through the different channels, such as right now. I think you're in Georgia, is it? Yeah,
Yes,
Tiffany
Mataji.
from Philadelphia. There's Brajabhakti from Columbus, and we're associating together. That wasn't happening before. So we've actually been blessed. And when, people talk about things going back to normal, I don't know what normal they're talking about. But when we do, finally get to go moving freely here and there, I hope we don't forget to use this wonderful platform and associate across the oceans. In one day you can go to so many countries and associate. Before that wasn't happening so much, so it's a blessing. So thank you very much. I wish you all well, and thank you for inviting me.
Sure, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, if no one have any questions, we can end the call here. Once again, thank you very so much, Prabhu, for enlightening class today, and we are very, very grateful to you. And we look forward for your association again and again in the future, Prabhu. Let's pay our obeisances to Prabhu. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha, kripa sindhubhyacha, patitanam pavanebhyo, vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Grace Malati Prabhu ki jai.
Dandavad Pranam Mataji, Hare Krishna. Dandavad Pranam.
Thank you for the beautiful class. Hare Krishna.